Come on, admit it, you thought we were done with the Nintendo Switch Online for March, right? But here we are, with just a few days left to go in the month, and Nintendo surprises everybody with the long overdue announcement that F-Zero Maximum Velocity will finally be hitting the system on Friday. That's really exciting news, but the question remains, is this handheld racing game actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, GamePro, The Next Generation, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said back when this game first came out. Oh boy, I hope you have a need for speed because we're hitting maximum velocity for this quickie episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew.
Game Boy Advance, console quality gaming anywhere.
While nowhere near as relaxing as Pilot Wings or as hyped as Super Mario World, F-Zero ended up being one of the most popular games to launch alongside the Super Nintendo. It was a fast and furious showcase that demonstrated the power of the new hardware, all while introducing one of Nintendo's best new franchises. Unfortunately, due to it being a first-generation launch title, the game wasn't as polished as future 16-bit titles and just didn't come with that many modes. I always figured that we would eventually see a sequel with more advanced tracks and a real multiplayer mode. But instead, we got Super Mario Kart and stunt race effects. In almost every way, F-Zero Maximum Velocity is the sequel that I had been waiting for. Sure, it came out a full decade after the original and also suffered from some of the issues that plague all launch games, but honestly this is exactly what I figured that a F-Zero sequel would look and play like. But what did the critics think? Were they into this blast from the past, or did they feel like it was a big step backwards after F-Zero X? Now when it comes to Electronic Gaming Monthly, the critics were split. Jonathan liked the game, but wasn't completely sold on Maximum Velocity. A lot has happened to the racing genre since the original F-Zero hit the Super NES, but this Game Boy Advance version proves that you don't need karts or combat to make a good racer nowadays. Fans of the old game should pretty much forget everything they know about the controls. This one's a lot more slippery. Not worse though, it's just different. It's not the most innovative GBA effort, but F-Zero is good, nostalgic fun for anybody with enough sunlight to play it. Greg, on the other hand, loved the game, giving it a 9 out of 10 and arguing that this sequel is even better than the original. The graphics are every bit as good, only now there's extra unlockable hovercrafts and all new tracks. Here's my problem with F-Zero. Using the shoulder buttons to drag one side or another of your craft around the turns is an integral part of mastering the game. The problem is the tiny Game Boy Advance makes it very uncomfortable for anyone with big hands to play for very long. They get sore holding your fingers on the shoulder buttons. Even with that complaint, Greg's higher marks earns F-Zero Maximum Velocity an average score of 7.8 out of 10. While that may seem a little low, EGM's score is largely in line with what we saw from most critics in 2001. For example, you saw GBA World give the launch game a 4 out of 5 in their 5th issue, which just so happens to be the exact same score you saw from Nintendo Power. The lowest score I could find came from Next Generation, who gave F-Zero 3 stars out of 5 and called the game dated. Another of Nintendo's well-chosen reworks of classic Super Nintendo titles, F-Zero is best described as Wipeout version 0.5. The graphics sacrifice detail for velocity, granting the game a very quick frame rate and great sensation of speed, but the various courses are all nearly featureless. However, it is one of 4 racing titles available at launch, and it fits a particular niche. It's not as cute as Konami's Crazy Racer, THQ's GT Advance is easier to pick up and play, and Kemco's Top Gear GT Championship is much prettier, though quite inferior. Now, it's probably worth noting that there are a few critics who saw F-Zero as one of the Game Boy Advance's best launch games, right up there with Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Game Informer went as far as to give Maximum Velocity a high score of 9 out of 10. But oh look now, because GamePro went even higher, going with a perfect 5 out of 5. Maximum Velocity may not seem flashy, but it's a great blend of speed and looks with sharp sprites, blazing motion, and a cool, pulsating soundtrack. In a racer this fast, you need solid controls, and while the addition of the shoulder buttons helps, it's sometimes hard to be precise with the GBA's tiny handheld directional pad and buttons. Overall, however, this F-Zero is every bit as good, if not better, than the amazing Super Nintendo version. It's a must-buy in the launch lineup. Look, while all of these complaints are definitely valid, the good news is that a lot of the gameplay issues won't matter as much when you're playing on the Switch. I could certainly see people viewing this as one of the lesser F-Zero sequels, sure. But honestly, I always enjoyed this return to the classic form. Give it a try now that it's finally out on the Switch.
Game Boy Advance
ロケットスタートブラストターンいいのいた
テクニックを磨いて 0.01 秒を争い4人対戦も熱くなるゲームボーイアドバンス F-Zero。
Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every time Nintendo adds old school games to their online service. In fact, we have a whole playlist where we cover 100% of the games on the Nintendo Switch Online. Every single one of them. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite futuristic racing game? For a lot of people, it comes down to a battle between F-Zero and Wipeout. You know what? There are a lot of futuristic racing games out there to choose from. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a review of Death of a Wish, which is a game that you absolutely need to check out. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.